I'm Marcus, 32, a software developer from Boston with a family that's always been complicated. Our winter trip to Colorado was supposed to be special, a chance to finally bond after years of tension. I spent weeks looking forward to this vacation. Despite knowing my sister Jessica has always been the golden child. When we arrived at the resort, my excitement shattered as I discovered they hadn't booked a room for me. What happened next changed our family forever. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how standing up for yourself can sometimes be the wake-up call your family desperately needs. Growing up in our middle-class suburb outside Boston, the pattern was established early. My parents, Brian and Eleanor, never said they favored my sister Jessica, but their actions spoke volumes. When Jessica got straight A's, they took her to fancy dinners. When I got straight A's, I received a casual, good job, at the dinner table. This wasn't just my perception, even my aunts and uncles noticed it, occasionally making comments that my parents would quickly dismiss. Jessica is 3 years younger than me, and from the day she was born, she seemed to capture everyone's attention. Her dance recitals were family events that everyone had to attend. My soccer championships? My parents often showed up late, claiming work obligations. When Jessica had a cold, my mother would stay home from work. When I had the flu, I was old enough to tough it out, with some soup left in the refrigerator. As we entered adulthood, the pattern continued. Jessica met Richard in college, a finance major from a wealthy family who now works at a prestigious investment firm. They got married 6 years ago in an elaborate ceremony that my parents contributed $40,000 toward. They have a 5-year-old son, Tyler, who is admittedly adorable and whom I love dearly despite the family dynamics. When Jessica and Richard bought their house in an upscale neighborhood, my parents helped with the down payment, nearly $100,000. When I purchased my condo a year later, I mentioned needing a little help with closing costs. My father suggested I budget better, and reminded me about the virtues of financial independence. My career in software development has actually been quite successful. 3 months ago, I received a substantial promotion that came with a 30% raise and a leadership position managing a team of 12 developers. When I shared the news, my mother said, "That's nice, dear," before immediately turning the conversation to Jessica's charity gala committee appointment. Our annual family vacations began when Jessica and I were teenagers and have continued into adulthood. They're typically planned 6 months in advance, with everyone supposedly having input. In reality, Jessica's preferences almost always determine our destination. This year's Colorado trip was actually my suggestion, but that was only because Jessica had mentioned wanting to try skiing there. Despite the obvious favoritism, I've worked hard to maintain good relationships with everyone. I call my parents weekly. I remember everyone's birthdays with thoughtful gifts. I attend every one of Tyler's birthday parties with carefully selected presents that he loves. I've tried discussing the favoritism with my parents once or twice, but they dismissed it as me being too sensitive or competitive with my sister. The planning for this Colorado trip seemed normal at first. We had a family group chat where dates were discussed, and I was included in all the conversations. I noticed my suggestions about activities were often ignored, but I was used to that. When my father mentioned booking rooms at the resort, I offered to handle my own reservation, but he insisted he'd take care of everything since he had a system for getting the best rates. In the weeks leading up to the trip, despite my reservations about the usual family dynamics, I found myself genuinely excited. I had just completed a major project at work and needed the break. I carefully packed gifts for everyone: a handcrafted wooden train for Tyler that I'd found at a local artisan shop, a vintage brooch for my mother that matched one she'd lost years ago, a rare whiskey for my father, and even a cashmere scarf for Jessica. I believed, perhaps naively, that this trip might be different. That somehow this time, I'd finally feel like an equal member of the family. The night before my flight, I called my parents to confirm final details. My mother seemed distracted but assured me everything was set. "We're so looking forward to seeing you," she said, though her tone lacked conviction. I ignored the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. After all, this was family. Surely, whatever our issues, they wouldn't deliberately exclude me. I was about to learn how wrong I was. The Aspen Mountain Resort was even more beautiful than the pictures online had suggested. Snow-capped peaks provided a stunning backdrop to the rustic luxury lodge with its stone facade and soaring timber entryway. A massive Christmas tree dominated the lobby, decorated with ornaments that caught the light from the enormous stone fireplace. Under different circumstances, it would have been the perfect winter wonderland. I arrived early afternoon after a connecting flight through Denver and a shuttle ride from the airport. My parents had flown in that morning, and Jessica, Richard, and Tyler were scheduled to arrive shortly after me. The lobby was bustling with holiday travelers, families laughing and planning their skiing adventures while staff efficiently moved luggage and answered questions. When I spotted my parents sitting in the lobby's seating area, my father was absorbed in his phone while my mother flipped through a resort brochure. Their greeting was predictably lukewarm, my mother offering a quick hug, my father a distracted handshake and pat on the shoulder. "Good flight?" my father asked, not looking up from his phone. "Not bad," I replied. "A little turbulence coming into Denver, but nothing major." My mother nodded absently. "Jessica just texted. They're about 20 minutes away." Sure enough, 20 minutes later, my sister made her entrance. Jessica has always had a flair for the dramatic, and today was no exception. She swept into the lobby wearing designer winter wear that looked like it had never seen actual snow, directing the bellhop carrying their 4 matching luxury suitcases. Richard followed, looking slightly embarrassed by the display while holding Tyler's hand. Tyler spotted me immediately and broke free from his father, running across the lobby shouting, "Uncle Marcus!" This genuine excitement was the first warm welcome I'd received, and I scooped him up in a big hug. "I miss you, buddy! I've got something special for you in my bag." "Is it a train?" "I love trains now," Tyler asked, his eyes wide with excitement. I laughed, surprised. "How did you know?" "I just really wanted one, and Mom says you always get me what I want." At least I'd done something right in Jessica's eyes, even if it was just gift selection for her son. After the greetings and obligatory small talk about travels, my father announced it was time to check in. We approached the front desk where a cheerful staff member welcomed us. "Checking in for the Wilson family," my father said, presenting his ID and credit card. The clerk typed efficiently on her computer. "Yes, I have your reservations right here. 3 rooms, 1 king suite for Brian and Eleanor Wilson. 1 family suite with king bed and pull-out sofa for Jessica and Richard Wilson and their child, and that's it. Just the 2 rooms." I waited for her to continue, but she was already preparing keycards. "Excuse me," I said, "but there should be a 3rd room for Marcus Wilson." "That's me." The clerk looked confused and checked her system again. "I'm sorry, sir, but I only have 2 rooms reserved under the Wilson booking. Let me check if there's a separate reservation under your name." After a minute of searching, she shook her head. "I don't see any reservation for a Marcus Wilson. Would you like to book a room now?" I turned to my father, expecting him to correct what I assumed was a booking error. The look on his face told me immediately this was no mistake. "Dad? You didn't book a room for me?" My father shifted uncomfortably, glancing at my mother, who suddenly found the lobby decor fascinating. "Well, Marcus, we assumed you'd get your own room. You're an adult with a good job. Jessica has the family to think about. And your mother and I are covering the main expenses for the trip." I stood there, stunned into silence as the implication of his words sank in. They had deliberately excluded me from the family booking. "The resort is fully booked for the holiday week," the clerk added apologetically. We've been at capacity for months. I see, I said quietly, trying to process what was happening. Maybe there's something nearby. I can find my own accommodations. My mind was racing, trying to problem solve while fighting the rising tide of hurt and anger. Jessica, who had been half listening while pointing out resort features to Tyler, turned and offered the comment that would change everything. Don't make such a big deal about it, Marcus. We reserved rooms for me, my husband, and my child. We're the real family here. You're just extra. You can probably find some motel down the mountain. She delivered this with a dismissive wave of her hand. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to defend me, to express shock at Jessica's cruel words. Instead, my mother looked away awkwardly, and my father became very interested in the resort information packet. In that moment, something shifted inside me. Years of accepting second-class status in my own family crystallized into a single realization. Nothing was going to change unless I changed it. The hurt was still there, a physical ache in my chest, but alongside it grew a calm determination. Then I'll leave, I said simply. The lack of emotion in my voice seemed to surprise them more than if I'd shouted. Don't be dramatic. Jessica rolled her eyes. Just go find somewhere else to stay and meet us for dinner. No, I said, picking up my luggage. I mean, I'm leaving the trip. Have a nice vacation. As I turned to walk away, I heard my father call after me. Marcus, don't overreact. We'll figure something out. But I continued walking, straight through the grand lobby and out the heavy wooden doors into the crisp mountain air. Behind me, I could hear my parents' muted discussion, likely assuming I'd cool off and return. They didn't follow me. They didn't try to stop me. And that told me everything I needed to know about my place in the family. The rental car felt like a sanctuary as I sat behind the wheel, hands gripping tightly as I tried to steady my breathing. I hadn't even realized I was holding back tears until one escaped down my cheek. I quickly wiped it away, angry at myself for still caring so much about people who clearly cared so little about me. Get it together, Marcus, I muttered to myself, starting the engine. The heat slowly filled the car, but did nothing to warm the cold realization settling in my chest. My first instinct was practical: find somewhere to stay. I pulled out my phone and began searching nearby accommodations. But as the clerk had said, everything in Aspen was booked solid for the holiday week. The few available rooms were either 300 miles away or priced at thousands per night. After 30 minutes of increasingly desperate searching, I remembered my college roommate Anthony had moved to Denver a few years back. We hadn't spoken much recently beyond occasional social media interactions, but we'd been close once. Denver was about a 2-hour drive from Aspen, not ideal, but it was something. I found his number and hesitated only briefly before calling. He answered on the third ring. Marcus? Man, it's been ages. How are you? Hey, Anthony. I'm actually in Colorado right now. This is really last minute, but I'm in a situation. I gave him the condensed version of what had happened. There was a brief silence when I finished. Let me get this straight, Anthony said slowly. Your family invited you on vacation, didn't book you a room, and when you found out, basically told you that you're not really part of the family? That's about the size of it. Dude, get in your car and drive to Denver right now. I've got a spare bedroom with your name on it. We're going to have a much better time than your family anyway. The immediate acceptance and support nearly broke my composure again. Are you sure? It's Christmas week. I don't want to impose. Impose? Marcus, we lived together for 3 years in college. I've seen you with food poisoning from that sketchy taco truck. Nothing is an imposition after that. Come on, I'll text you my address. Drive safe. As I pulled out of the resort parking lot, I glanced back at the grand entrance. No one had come out looking for me. My phone hadn't rung. They probably assumed I was bluffing, or that I'd find some second-rate accommodation and rejoin them later, properly chastised for making a fuss. The drive to Denver gave me time to think. The winding mountain roads required attention, which helped focus my swirling thoughts. The beautiful Colorado landscape spread out around me, vast forests of pine trees dusted with snow, dramatic cliffs, and open valleys. It was the vacation scenery I'd been looking forward to, just not in the circumstances I'd imagined. As the miles passed, my hurt gradually transformed into something else. There was anger there, certainly, but also a strange sense of lightness. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely free of the constant effort to earn my family's approval. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. By the time I reached Denver and followed the GPS to Anthony's address, I had made a decision. This week would be for me. Not for pleasing my parents. Not for accommodating Jessica, not for being the bigger person yet again. Just for me. Anthony lived in a modern apartment building in a trendy Denver neighborhood. As I parked and gathered my luggage, he appeared at the entrance and jogged over to help. "Welcome to Casa, Anthony," he grinned, taking one of my bags. He looked good, more muscular than college days, with a neatly trimmed beard, but the same easy smile and warm eyes. His apartment was spacious and stylishly furnished clearly. His career in architectural design was going well. Large windows offered a view of the Denver skyline and, in the distance, the mountains. "This is great," I said, genuinely impressed. "Thanks again for taking me in." "Seriously, stop thanking me. I'm stoked to have you here. I was just going to binge-watch shows and eat too much over the holiday. Now I have a legitimate reason to show off my city and do all the tourist stuff I never make time for." He showed me to the guest room, which was clean and comfortable with a private bathroom attached. Once I'd set down my luggage, he handed me a beer from his fridge, and we sat in his living room, catching up on the years since we'd last seen each other in person. As the conversation naturally circled back to my family situation, Anthony's expression grew serious. "Look, I know it's not my place, but what your family did was messed up. My parents divorced when I was 12, and my dad's new family pulled similar stuff. Always made me feel like an afterthought. You know, it took me years to realize I didn't have to keep showing up just to be treated like crap. How did you handle it?" I asked. "Badly at first." He laughed. "Lots of angry emails and holiday arguments. But eventually I started setting boundaries. Stopped accepting invitations that felt like obligations. Started spending holidays with friends who actually wanted me around. Created my own traditions. It was hard, but man, it changed everything." As we talked, I checked my phone and saw I had 5 missed calls, 2 from my mother, 3 from my father, and a series of texts ranging from annoyed to concerned. I silenced the phone and put it away. "Not going to answer?" Anthony asked. "Not tonight. Maybe not this week. I need some space to figure out what I want from them going forward." Anthony nodded. "Mental health break from family." "I support this plan completely. So, what do you want to do with your unexpected Denver vacation?" We spent the evening planning. There was another ski resort about an hour from Denver that was less crowded than Aspen. Denver had museums, great restaurants, a vibrant downtown, and even a holiday market. Anthony mentioned a group of his friends was having a get-together the next night, and I'd be welcome to join. For the first time since arriving in Colorado, I felt genuine excitement. Not the forced enthusiasm I usually mustered for family events, but real anticipation for experiences I actually wanted to have. Before going to bed, I turned my phone completely off. Whatever family drama was unfolding in Aspen could wait. For once, I was choosing myself. Back in Aspen, the first few hours after my departure were exactly as I would have predicted. My family continued with their vacation plans, mildly inconvenienced by my dramatic exit, but largely unconcerned. My parents checked into their room, unpacked, and then met Jessica, Richard, and Tyler in the resort restaurant for a late lunch. My empty chair was the elephant in the room that everyone studiously ignored. "He'll cool off and call us later," my father said confidently, ordering an expensive bottle of wine for the table. "Marcus has always been sensitive." My mother nodded in agreement, though her eyes occasionally darted to the restaurant entrance. "He's probably found a hotel by now. Maybe in one of the neighboring towns." Jessica was less diplomatic. "I don't know why he's making such a big deal about this. It's not like we told him he couldn't come on the trip. He could have booked his own room months ago if he'd thought about it." Richard, who had always been polite but distant with me, looked uncomfortable. "Maybe someone should check if he's okay? It's getting dark, and the mountain roads can be dangerous." "He's a grown man," my father replied dismissively. "He doesn't need us checking up on him." Only Tyler seemed genuinely concerned about my absence. "Where did Uncle Marcus go? He said he had a present for me." "He's just being silly," Jessica told him. "He'll be back." The family spent the afternoon settling into their rooms and exploring the resort facilities. My mother called me twice, leaving brief messages asking where I was staying and when I'd be joining them for dinner. My father's calls were more direct. "This is childish, Marcus. Call us back and let's sort this out like adults." As evening approached and I still hadn't returned or answered any calls, the first hints of real concern began to surface. "It's been 5 hours," my mother said as they gathered for dinner. "He should have called by now." My father checked his phone again. "All my calls are going straight to voicemail now. He must have turned off his phone. Or maybe the battery died," Jessica suggested, though her usual confidence wavered slightly. "Or there's no reception where he is." Dinner was a subdued affair. The conversation repeatedly circled back to me, despite attempts to focus on planning the next day's activities. Tyler asked about me several times, clearly missing the uncle who always played with him and brought the best presents. By the time they returned to their rooms that night, my mother was openly worried. "Brian, what if something happened to him? What if he got into an accident on those mountain roads?" "Eleanor, he's fine," my father insisted, though he checked his phone one more time before going to bed. "He's just trying to make a point." The next morning, when there was still no word from me, the family's vacation mood had soured considerably. My mother's worry had intensified to near panic. "It's not like Marcus to just disappear. Even when he's upset, he always calls," she fretted over breakfast. "I'm going to check with the front desk, see if they can help us." The resort staff were sympathetic but limited in what they could do. Yes, they confirmed, I had definitely left the resort yesterday afternoon with my luggage. No, they hadn't seen me return. No. They couldn't share information about where I might have gone due to privacy policies. My father, whose irritation was now tinged with genuine concern, suggested they proceed with their planned skiing lesson, reasoning that I would contact them eventually. Jessica agreed, but my mother was too distracted to enjoy herself on the bunny slope. As an instructor patiently taught Tyler the basics, Jessica found herself uncharacteristically reflective. Richard noticed her unusual quietness. "Thinking about Marcus?" he asked. "He's being ridiculous," she replied automatically, but without her usual conviction. "He knows how to ruin a perfectly good vacation." Richard gave her a long look. "Jess, you told your brother he wasn't part of the real family. That was pretty harsh." "I didn't mean it like that," she protested. "I just meant that we needed the family suite because we have Tyler." "You know that's not what you were saying," Richard said quietly. "You've always competed with Marcus for your parents' attention, and you've always won. Maybe that's why you keep pushing." Jessica stared at her husband, shocked by his unexpected criticism. Before she could respond, Tyler fell on the snow and began crying. The conversation was shelved as they rushed to comfort him. But Richard's words had struck home in a way Jessica wasn't ready to acknowledge. By afternoon, with still no word from me, my parents' concern had escalated. My father began calling local hotels, only to discover what I had learned the previous day: everything within 50 miles was fully booked. He must have found something, he muttered, increasingly frustrated. Or maybe he drove back to Denver for a flight home. My mother was now openly distressed. We need to call the police, Brian. What if he's hurt somewhere? And tell them what? That our 32-year-old son got upset and left? They'll tell us to wait 48 hours. The family gathered for an early dinner. The festive atmosphere of the resort in stark contrast to their growing tension. It was during this meal that my father finally confronted Jessica. "This is partly your fault," he said bluntly. That comment about the Rio family was completely uncalled for. Jessica's face flushed. "So this is all on me? You're the ones who didn't book him a room. You're the ones who always taught me that I was special, that I deserved more." "We never said that," my mother protested weakly. "You didn't have to say it. You showed it every day," Jessica retorted. "And now you're shocked that Marcus finally had enough?" The argument escalated, with years of unspoken family dynamics suddenly erupting at a public dinner table. Richard tried to calm the situation while Tyler, overwhelmed by the adult's emotions, began to cry again. "I want Uncle Marcus," he sobbed. "He promised to teach me to build a snowman. He said he had a special train for me." Jessica tried to comfort him, but Tyler pulled away. "You made Uncle Marcus go away. You were mean to him." Even a 5-year-old could see what the adults had been denying for years. The table fell into uncomfortable silence, broken only by Tyler's continued sniffling. My father paid the bill quickly, and the family returned to their rooms in silence. That night, in their king's suite, my parents had their own reckoning. "We've really messed up, haven't we?" my mother said quietly in the darkness. My father, who had always been quick to defend their parenting, was uncharacteristically reflective. "I didn't think it was that bad. I thought Marcus understood that Jessica needed more attention. More help. Why would he understand that? Why would anyone?" My mother's voice broke slightly. "Brian, what if he doesn't come back? Not just to this vacation, but to us? What if this was the last straw?" The question hung in the air between them, either willing to voice their deepest fear, that they might have finally pushed their son away for good. While my family was grappling with my absence, I was experiencing the most liberating day I'd had in years. Anthony and I arrived at Copper Mountain Ski Resort shortly after it opened. The slopes were less crowded than Aspen would have been, and the views were just as spectacular. "I haven't been skiing in 2 years," I admitted as we collected our rental equipment. "I might be a bit rusty." "No judgment here," Anthony laughed. "I fall at least 3 times every time I come out. It's tradition." We started on an intermediate run to warm up. The sensation of gliding down the mountain, cold air rushing past, required total concentration. There was no room for family drama, no space for hurt feelings or old resentments. There was only the mountain, the snow, and the exhilarating feeling of movement. After a few runs, we stopped at a slopeside cafe for coffee. The deck offered panoramic views of the mountains, sunlight glinting off the snow-covered peaks. "This is incredible," I said, feeling more relaxed than I had in months. "Thanks for bringing me here instead of letting me wallow in Denver." Wallowing was plan B. Anthony grinned. But this seemed better for the soul. As we prepared for another run, a ski instructor leading a small group caught my attention. She was probably around my age, with auburn hair peeking out from her helmet and a confident, graceful skiing style as she demonstrated techniques. Anthony noticed my distraction. "That's Samantha. She's friends with my roommate from a couple years back. Want an introduction?" Before I could respond, he was already waving her over. She spotted us and, after giving her group instructions, skied over smoothly. "Anthony! I didn't know you were coming up today." She smiled, pulling off her goggles. Her eyes were a warm brown that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "Last-minute decision," Sam, this is my friend Marcus from Boston. Marcus, this is Samantha, the best ski instructor in Colorado and a pretty decent human being too. High praise. I laughed, extending a gloved hand. Nice to meet you. You too. Enjoying our mountain? Her direct gaze was friendly but appraising. It's amazing. Definitely worth the cross-country flight. We chatted briefly before she had to return to her group. Before leaving, she mentioned she was off duty at 4 and invited us to join her and some friends for après-ski drinks at the lodge. Smooth, Anthony teased as she skied away. You manage complete sentences and everything. I shoved him playfully. Shut up. Let's hit another run. The rest of the day passed in a blur of skiing, laughter, and the simple joy of being in a beautiful place with good company. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't managing anyone else's emotions or measuring my words carefully to avoid causing offense. I was just being. At 4, we met Samantha and her friends at the lodge. The group was welcoming and laid-back outdoor enthusiasts who lived for mountain adventures. As we shared pitchers of beer and plates of nachos, the conversation flowed easily from skiing to work to travel stories. When Samantha asked what brought me to Colorado, I gave a simplified version of events: family vacation gone wrong. Reconnecting with an old friend instead. Family can be complicated, she said with understanding. I didn't speak to my parents for a year in my 20s. Best thing I ever did for our relationship. Ironically. Really? What happened? She described how her parents had disapproved of her decision to become a ski instructor instead of using her business degree for a corporate job. The breaking point came when they refused to attend her small wedding to a fellow instructor, claiming it was endorsing her poor life choices. I got fed up with trying to win their approval, so I stopped trying. A year later, my mom called out of the blue. Said they miss me. We started talking again, but with new boundaries. They respect my choices now, even if they don't always understand them. Her story resonated deeply. How did you find the courage to hold that boundary for so long? I asked. It wasn't courage so much as self-preservation, she replied. I realized I was the only one suffering from trying to change their minds. Once I accepted they might never approve of my choices, I could make decisions based on what I actually wanted. That evening, as Anthony drove us back to Denver, I checked my phone briefly. The screen lit up with notifications, 28 missed calls, 43 text messages, and numerous voicemails. Wow, Anthony commented, glancing over. They're really blowing up your phone. I scrolled through a few of the messages. They ranged from my father's initial irritation, "This is immature," Marcus, to my mother's escalating worry, "Please just let us know you're safe," to Jessica's surprising contrition, "I shouldn't have said what I did. Please call back." After a moment's consideration, I composed a single text to my parents. "I'm safe. Enjoying vacation elsewhere." "That's it?" Anthony asked. "That's it," I confirmed, turning the phone off again. "They know I'm okay. That's all they need for now." Over the next 2 days, Anthony and I explored Denver. We visited the art museum, sampled local breweries, and spent an evening at a jazz club. Samantha drove down from the mountains to join us for dinner one night, and the connection between us continued to grow. On our third evening, sitting on Anthony's balcony with beers in hand, he asked the question I'd been avoiding. "So what happens when you go back to Boston? With your family, I mean." I was quiet for a long moment, watching the city lights against the darkening sky. "I think I need to redraw some boundaries. All my life, I've been the one compromising, the one making allowances, the one accepting less. And for what? To be the good son who still gets treated like an afterthought?" Anthony nodded encouragingly. "I don't want to cut them off completely," I continued. "But I can't go back to the way things were either. I'm thinking about what you said, about creating your own traditions. Maybe next Christmas I'll do a trip with friends instead." You're always welcome here, Anthony offered sincerely. Thanks. And maybe I'll see my family on my terms. Short visits. Public places where everyone is on their best behavior. I smiled ruefully. Maybe I'll start saying no when something doesn't work for me, instead of always being the one to adjust. Revolutionary concept, Anthony said with mock seriousness. Actually advocating for your own needs in a relationship. We laughed, but his words struck home. All my life, I'd believed that unconditional accommodation was the price of family belonging. It had never occurred to me that healthy family relationships should involve mutual respect and consideration. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in months. Unburdened by the constant weight of seeking approval I was never going to fully receive. The call came on the 5th day of my self-imposed exile. I was sitting in a coffee shop with Samantha, who had the day off and had driven down to Denver again. We were planning a day trip to Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs when my phone rang. I had turned it back on the previous day, though I was still screening calls from my family. This time, it was my father, and something made me answer. Hello? Marcus, thank God. My father's voice was tight with stress. We need your help. Tyler's had an accident. My stomach dropped. What happened? Is he okay? He fell on the ice outside the resort. Broken wrist and a mild concussion. We're at Aspen Valley Hospital. Your mother's a mess, Jessica can't stop crying, and we don't have a car. The resort shuttle is running on a holiday schedule. We can't get a cab or rideshare for hours. What about Richard? I asked, already calculating the drive time from Denver to Aspen. Business emergency. He had to fly back to Boston this morning. My father's voice cracked slightly. Marcus, I know we've treated you terribly. I don't have the right to ask, but Tyler's asking for you, and we're stuck here without transportation. I covered the phone and quickly explained the situation to Samantha. Without hesitation, she said, Go. Your nephew needs you. I'll take an Uber back to my friend's place. I'll be there. I told my father. It's a 2-hour drive from Denver. Text me the hospital details. Anthony was equally supportive when I called to explain. Take my car, he insisted. I can Uber to work this week. Do you want me to come with you for moral support? I hesitated, then accepted. Having a neutral party present might help keep the inevitable family confrontation from deteriorating. The drive to Aspen was tense. I was worried about Tyler, but also apprehensive about facing my family after walking out and ignoring them for days. Anthony kept the conversation light, sensing my anxiety. Remember, you're doing this for Tyler, he reminded me as we approached Aspen. You don't owe the adults anything. Aspen Valley Hospital was a modern facility at the edge of town. We found my family in the pediatric ward waiting area. My mother spotted me first, rising from her chair with a cry. Marcus! You came! She rushed toward me, arms outstretched. I accepted her hug stiffly, then stepped back. How's Tyler? They're setting his wrist and running some final tests, my father said, approaching more cautiously. The doctor says he'll be fine, but they want to observe him for a few hours because of the concussion. Jessica sat in a corner chair, her face blotchy from crying. When she saw me, something unexpected happened. Instead of her usual defensive posture or dismissive attitude, she broke down completely. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. This is all my fault. If I hadn't been so horrible to you, you would have been there, and maybe Tyler wouldn't have fallen, and everything is just falling apart, and I don't know how to fix any of it. The raw emotion seemed to surprise her as much as it did me. Jessica had always been the composed one, the perfect daughter. Seeing her so completely undone was disarming. Hey, I said, awkwardly patting her shoulder. Kids have accidents. It's not your fault he fell. Not that. She shook her head vehemently. Everything else. The room. What I said. How I've always. How I've always pushed you away because I was afraid if they loved you as much as they loved me, there wouldn't be enough left for me. The waiting room fell silent except for Jessica's sobs. My parents looked stunned by her admission. I felt a lifetime of suspicions confirmed Jessica had been aware of the favoritism and had actively protected it. I think, Anthony said into the awkward silence, I'm going to find the cafeteria and give you folks some privacy. He squeezed my shoulder supportively as he left. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Tyler's asking for his Uncle Marcus. He's pretty upset, and we'd like to keep him calm. Could you come in? I followed her to a treatment room where Tyler lay in a bed that made him look even smaller than his 5 years. His left arm was in a bright blue cast, and a small bandage covered a cut on his forehead. When he saw me, his face lit up despite the tears drying on his cheeks. Uncle Marcus! You came back! Mommy said you were gone forever. Not forever, buddy, I said, carefully sitting on the edge of his bed. I just needed some time to myself. But I'll always come when you need me. Look at my cool cast. The doctor said I was super brave. His childish resilience was already asserting itself, the traumatic fall becoming an adventure story. You are super brave. Way braver than me. Did you bring my train? He asked hopefully. I had to smile at his priorities. It's still in my suitcase at my friend's house. But I promise you'll get it soon. I stayed with Tyler until he fell asleep, exhausted from the pain medication and the excitement. When I returned to the waiting room, my family was huddled in conversation. They fell silent when I entered. My father stood, his usual commanding presence subdued. Marcus, we owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. We've been talking while you were with Tyler. My mother added. About how we've treated you over the years. We never meant to make you feel less important, but we can see now that our actions spoke otherwise. Why did you do it? I asked quietly. It was the question I'd wanted to ask for decades. My parents exchanged glances. Jessica was always more demanding. My father said slowly, You were so self-sufficient. Even as a child. We fell into a pattern of giving her more attention because she seemed to need it more. It wasn't fair to you. And after a while, it became the norm. My mother admitted. We didn't even question it anymore. When your father was booking the rooms, we automatically thought of Jessica's needs first. It's not an excuse. It's just how ingrained the pattern had become. Jessica, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up. I knew what was happening. All along. And I liked it. I liked being the favorite. I liked knowing that if it came down to a choice between us, they'd choose me. Her voice was small but steady. That makes me a terrible sister, doesn't it? The raw honesty in the room was unprecedented in our family history. For generations, the Wilsons had specialized in polite fiction and unacknowledged elephants. This brutal truth-telling was new territory for all of us. Where do we go from here? I asked, not expecting a real answer. My father surprised me. That's up to you, Marcus. We're the ones who need to make amends. Just tell us what you need from us going forward. Before I could respond, Anthony returned with coffee for everyone. His timing was perfect, providing a moment to process the emotional conversation. As we all sipped the hospital cafeteria's mediocre coffee, Richard called to check on Tyler. Jessica put him on speaker, and he was audibly relieved to hear I had arrived. Marcus, thank you for coming, he said sincerely. I'm sorry I had to leave this morning. The Boston office had a crisis that couldn't wait. It's okay, I replied. Tyler's going to be fine. After Jessica updated him on Tyler's condition, Richard asked to speak to me privately. Stepping into the hallway with the phone, I was unprepared for his directness. I want to apologize for not speaking up sooner, he said. I've seen how they treat you, and I've never said anything. It wasn't my place to interfere. But as a fellow outsider in the Wilson family, I should have shown more solidarity. His acknowledgement was surprisingly meaningful. Richard and I had never been close, but his recognition of the family dynamic validated my experience in a way my parents' belated apology hadn't quite managed. "I appreciate that," I said simply. "What are your plans now?" he asked. "Are you staying in Aspen?" "I honestly don't know," I admitted. "Anthony offered his place in Denver for the rest of the week. I might go back there. Whatever you decide, I respect it. Just know that Tyler adores you, and I value the positive influence you have on him." After we hung up, I returned to the waiting room to find the doctor updating my family. Tyler would be discharged in a few hours with instructions for care and follow-up appointments back in Boston. "Someone will need to stay with him tonight, and wake him every few hours because of the concussion," the doctor explained. "I'll do it," Jessica volunteered immediately. As the doctor left, my father turned to me. "Marcus, we understand if you don't want to stay in Aspen, but we'd like a chance to make this right somehow." I looked at Anthony, who gave me an encouraging nod. "I'm not staying at the resort," I said firmly. "But Anthony and I booked a room at a hotel in downtown Aspen for tonight, to be close to Tyler. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. The hotel Anthony and I found in downtown Aspen was a modest 3-star establishment, a stark contrast to the luxury resort my family had chosen. But it was clean, comfortable, and most importantly, it was neutral territory. The next morning, we met my family for breakfast at a cafe halfway between our locations. Tyler, despite his cast and the bandage on his forehead, was in good spirits. Fascinated by the signatures the hospital staff had already added to his cast. "You have to sign it too, Uncle Marcus," he insisted, carefully protecting his cast from maple syrup as he devoured a stack of pancakes. I obliged, writing, "Get well soon, champion. Love, Uncle Marcus," in a space he indicated was saved special for me. The adults made awkward small talk, dancing around the elephant in the room until Anthony, bless him, addressed it directly. "So," he said cheerfully during a lull in conversation, "I hear you folks are planning some family therapy when you get back to Boston." My parents looked startled, then sheepish. "We mentioned it might be a good idea," my father admitted. "It's long overdue," my mother added. "We have a lot of patterns to unlearn." Jessica, who had been uncharacteristically subdued, nodded in agreement. "I've already found someone who specializes in family dynamics. She has openings in January." I was surprised by their initiative but still wary. "One therapy session isn't going to fix decades of issues. We know," my father said seriously. "This is just a starting point. We're committed to making real changes, Marcus. If you're willing to give us the chance." The sincerity in his voice was something I'd rarely heard directed at me. Usually, my father reserved that tone for Jessica's accomplishments or Tyler's milestones. "I need time," I said honestly. "And I need to see consistent change. Not just promises made in the emotional aftermath of a crisis." "That's more than fair." My mother agreed quickly. The conversation shifted to practical matters. What to do about the remaining 3 days of vacation? My parents surprised me by suggesting they check out of the resort and move to accommodations in Denver. "We could spend a couple of days exploring the city," my father proposed. "Tyler's skiing is obviously on hold, but there are plenty of indoor activities that would be easier with his cast. If that's okay with you, Marcus?" The consideration asking my preference rather than announcing a decision was another small but noticeable shift. "Actually," Anthony interjected, "I was going to suggest something similar. My place isn't big enough for everyone, but there's a nice hotel near me with availability. And Denver has some great kid-friendly museums and the holiday market downtown." We spent the next hour planning a revised itinerary that would split time between Aspen and Denver. Tyler would rest another day in Aspen while his medication regimen stabilized, then the family would relocate to Denver for the final 2 days. As breakfast concluded and we prepared to go our separate ways for the day, Jessica pulled me aside. "I need to say something else," she began awkwardly. "I've been thinking about why I said what I did at the resort. About being the real family." I waited, not making it easier for her. This was a conversation long overdue. "I think I've always been jealous of you," she continued, surprising me. "You're so self-sufficient. You built your career without help. You have this confidence that I've never had. Despite all the advantages I've been given. That's not how I see myself at all," I admitted. "I know. That's part of the problem. You don't see how impressive you are. And I've worked really hard to keep it that way." She looked genuinely remorseful. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I've been a terrible sister." "Not terrible," I said after a moment. "Just human. We all have our insecurities." It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a bridge neither of us had been willing to build before. The next day passed quietly. Anthony and I took Tyler to a local indoor play space adapted for kids with injuries while my parents handled the resort checkout and Jessica arranged the Denver accommodations. Seeing my nephew's delight at simple activities reminded me why I had come back despite the hurt. On our drive to Denver the following day, Tyler fell asleep in the back seat of Anthony's car. He had insisted on riding with Uncle Marcus and his cool friend. The quiet gave Anthony and me a chance to talk. "How are you holding up with all this family intensity?" he asked. "Better than I expected," I admitted. "It's weird to have them actually listening to me for once." "I'm not sure how long it will last. Change is hard, especially breaking lifelong patterns. But the fact that they're trying is significant." "Yeah," I agreed. "Though it took me walking out and their grandson getting injured to make it happen. Sometimes it takes a shock to the system to recognize a problem." Anthony shrugged. "The important thing is what happens next." The Denver portion of the vacation turned out to be more enjoyable than I could have imagined. My parents made visible efforts to include me equally in all decisions and conversations. Jessica was less competitive and more collaborative. Tyler, oblivious to the adult dynamics but thrilled to have everyone together, served as a unifying force with his enthusiasm for every activity. On our final evening, as we walked through the holiday market downtown, my father pulled me aside. "Your mother and I have been talking," he began. "We'd like to plan next year's family vacation differently. Maybe you could take the lead on organizing it?" The offer of control over a family tradition was both an olive branch and an acknowledgement of past exclusion. "I'll think about it," I said, not quite ready to commit to future family events. "Of course," he nodded, respecting my hesitation. "No pressure. Just know that we want you there. And we're willing to do it on terms that feel fair to you." Later that night, after everyone had returned to their hotel, Anthony and I sat on his balcony reflecting on the week's events. "So, what happens when you get back to Boston?" he asked. "Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm cautiously optimistic but realistic. People don't change overnight." "And what about Samantha?" He grinned. Changing the subject. "She texted me twice asking how things were going with your family." I couldn't help smiling. "We're having dinner when she's in Boston next month for a winter sports convention. Look at you, getting a life outside family drama," Anthony teased. "It's about time, right?" 3 months later, the changes in my family dynamic remained a work in progress, but with promising developments. The family therapy sessions had continued bi-weekly, providing a structured environment to address long-standing issues. My parents had made consistent efforts to treat Jessica and me more equitably, though occasional old patterns still emerged. Perhaps most significantly, I had developed a new confidence in setting boundaries. When my mother called with last-minute demands on my time, I no longer automatically rearranged my schedule. When family gatherings became tense, I felt empowered to leave rather than endure for the sake of keeping peace. Samantha and I had continued dating long distance, with weekend visits every few weeks. Her perspective as an outsider who had navigated her own family challenges provided valuable support. As for Jessica, our relationship had evolved into something more authentic. Without the constant competition for parental approval, we were slowly discovering we actually enjoyed each other's company in small doses. She had even called recently to ask my advice about a career decision, a first in our adult relationship. The annual family vacation planning for the coming summer was underway, with a shared document where everyone contributed ideas equally. I had suggested a lakeside cabin in Maine where we could each have our own space but come together for activities, a physical manifestation of our new approach to family boundaries. The painful experience at the Aspen resort had been a necessary catalyst for change. By walking away, I had forced my family to see me clearly for perhaps the first time. The journey wasn't complete, real healing rarely is, but we were moving in the right direction. As I look back on that pivotal moment when I walked out of the resort, I realized that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a relationship is to refuse to accept less than you deserve. Sometimes you have to be willing to leave in order to create the possibility of something better upon return. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to make them see your worth? Or have you been on the other side, only realizing what you had after it was gone? Share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics and personal growth. And remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for healthy relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you navigate your own family challenges with courage and self-respect.